L&D has evolved in various ways. L&D was primarily training, something that opens up the minds for people, helps them develop skills. Business is changing, and so the need for capabilities to change continues. Layoffs being a taboo, I think we just need to align that it's part of life. Don't fall in love with your product.
Fall in love with the process because products might change. Hello and welcome to Wizards of Learning, a chat show where we put L&D well beyond the boundaries of learning and development. I'm Chaya Dabas and I'm the faculty in residence at Harappa, India's foremost learning platform. And let me tell you that even though businesses and professionals alike may be more focused on earning, every organization needs effective learning to future proof itself, to boost business performance and empower employees, and of course, prevent turning even. So every episode, we are going to turn the spotlight on L&D custodians at some of India's leading companies who are on top of the latest concepts and the latest trends. And the burning question remains, is it finally possible to close all of those terrifying skill gaps? So if you are yearning to know how to do L&D well, sit back and relax. And let's begin and dive right into Wizards of Learning. Our guest today goes by the name Ruchira Garg. She is the Vice President of People Operations at Grey Orange. So hello Learning Wizard and welcome to our show. Let's start with telling our audience a little about you and your journey.
Thank you so much, Chaya. It's great to be here. Just to introduce myself, I am actually currently leading all the HR consulting functions at Grey Orange. Today, I'm so excited to be here because, Grey Orange is trying to do different things in learning, and Harappa is a great partner for us.
That's wonderful, Ruchira. I'm actually, I just realized that I am in the company of such a established wizard of learning. And, of course, we're going to dig deeper into what L&D means to you and how your experience is now shaping the experiences of so many around you. But right off the bat, what does L&D mean to you?
When you look at any function or any role, learning and development is extremely core to it because we need to constantly hone our capabilities to remain relevant, to remain competitive. As a function, I see learning and development as something that opens up the minds for people, as an accelerator that helps them develop skills to be able to find their own solutions versus giving them the exact answers. So that's learning and development for me.
That's a very fascinating answer, Ruchira, and I am more intrigued to learn about how have you seen this landscape change in, I would say, the last 2 decades. And I'm also curious to know what's the speed that you're looking, what's the speed of the change that we're talking about here?
Absolutely. I think over the last couple of decades, L&D has evolved in various ways. I mean, not just the name of the function has evolved for sure, but also the scope and the way learning and development is being delivered. When I started my career, L&D was primarily training. That's the word that was used for it. It used to be event-based programs. People would just enroll in classrooms, and that's the only way they absorb content. To today, there are so many various mechanisms by which people are absorbing, consuming, and practicing content. It's also bite-sized content, which has kind of become more popular than long-drawn programs. I think gone are those days of massive enterprise-wide programs that took years to create and accordingly years to deliver and see impact. While the baseline may still be there, like organizations may still have enterprise-wide programs to deliver a baseline for everybody to be at the same level. But at the same time, there is a lot more focus on customized content and to make that a journey along with day-to-day work versus a one-time event. So that's the big change I have seen in L&D's journey through this time.
Just a follow-up question to what you last spoke. I was just curious to know that this change that you've seen, is it more learner-led or is it more organization-led or is it more just, the need of the hour and the demand that we have of the world today and how it's changing around us? Who's driving this change?
Well, I think both. Both the change is determined by the speed at which business is changing. So, I think all the companies now operate in a startup mode. While depending on the size of the organization, we may think they are fairly established, but truly speaking, even if you look at a large firm or a high growth firm or something that has just started right now, None of us know what we would be doing in 18 months from now. The way our competition is changing, like whoever thought that Netflix's biggest competitor will become an e-commerce giant, or an e-commerce giant will become Netflix's competitor. So, that's the way business is changing. And so the need for capabilities to change continuously, that's driving the change for sure. The other thing is the individuals who are the actual users, the employees who are learning, it's significantly changed from the way they are absorbing content. Like, the people who are coming out of college today are actually more onto social media, they're more onto digital platforms than, bringing them into a classroom for a 3-day workshop. Attention spans are diminishing, workloads are increasing. So all this is driving the change in terms of continuing to keep L&D front and center and not just a good to have. So that's how I see this change, or the driver of this change happening. I also think we as facilitators, we as L&D, people who orchestrate learning and development in the organization are also bringing in a lot more creativity, and that's where organizations like Harappa really help us, because you're consultants in this space and you help us continue to be relevant. But that's also the third aspect of the change. It's both the business, the learner, as well as the orchestrator who are all driving this change together.
I feel with this changing times and with your desire to ensure that different needs get assessed and catered to really well, I'm also curious to know, how do we cater to this volume of requirements or needs and different skills? And the second part of my question is, when you're not doing a uniform solution, or if it's not about, the same hat fits all heads, how do we ensure that each and every learner stays engaged and feels fulfilled from their journey?
Honestly, Chaya, this is one of our biggest challenges. As any L&D orchestrator, I use that term versus a facilitator because there's so many roles within learning and development as well. But keeping the audience engaged and having them continue through the journey is one of the biggest challenges all of us face today. Uh, I spoke about enterprise-wide programs, earlier. One of the challenges has been when you make large programs like that, which caters to thousands of people, those programs tend to kind of bring down the level to the lowest common denominator. So when organizations set up a program for saying all managers will go through it, that includes first level managers who just entered that journey versus people who may be leading functions and have been doing this for years. And when you put them all together in a classroom or in a program together, then many of them don't feel that they are getting, something clearly meaningful for them. And hence, they start losing interest and start dropping off, or you don't see that participation. What we are trying to do, as an example for some solutions, is we have broken these learning journeys into more customized, smaller niche journeys. So, as an example, instead of a broad brush all manager program, we've broken it to first level managers, middle managers, and senior leaders. And or individual contributors are in a different program altogether, and let's not mix them up together. And then accordingly, the journeys are also based on the kind of time that they have. Like senior leaders, they don't have more than a couple of months to spend on this. They don't have more than it's very difficult to even bring out a few hours in a week to spend on any kind of learning. So can we make it more self-paced, and then some combination of classroom and some combination of videos? So that's the kind of journeys that we've created, more customized. At the same time, I think gone are those days of putting training hours as goals, because then that shifts the accountability from the learner to the orchestrator. And it's like the organizer has to now figure out how to keep them engaged versus the learner feeling that it's for me and I have to be engaged and I have to get something out. So, more and more organizations are moving towards the concept of introducing learning funds and more sponsorship, where you figure out a program, or the organization helps you figure out a program that caters to your specific need and funds it, versus having to create that program. There is enough content in the world out there, so not all organizations have to create everything for their people. And so this is something that is becoming extremely successful in companies, that instead of putting in hours, putting in more funds in terms of learning spend. The other aspect is also creating an ongoing bite-sized learning mechanism. Yes, micro-learning is big in terms of not just putting everybody through journeys, but how can we do more snippets? How can we put like quick 1 hour sessions, quick reading material, quick videos, versus getting people to come into classrooms or massive groups and for the whole day taking them out of it. So these are some of the solutions we are thinking of. There are obviously, have we been completely successful? We're still on that journey yet, but I'm sure that we will all learn in this journey ourselves and figure out much better ways of catering to other audience.
So, Ruchira, like while we do speak about custom solutions, I also feel the learner is getting smarter day by day. They are coming up with a unique set of challenges, of course, real world challenges as well, and not just something which is theoretical or on paper. So, I wanted to ask you, do you feel that custom solutions can actually help solve for these individual learning challenges better than, how we used to solve for them in a classroom setup or in a traditional route? I really want to pick your brains into, is this the right fit to solve the individual real world problems that people have today?
Well, one thing is true that people are coming into programs looking for an exact solution to their problem, and that's not really the intent of any learning and development initiative, program, system, whatever we may call it, right? So, when people come into any kind of programs, they say, okay, this is exactly the situation that I'm facing, and tell me how will you solve for it. But if we give them solutions, then we've only solved that situation for them and not help them solve for the future. They can't keep coming into a program every time they have a problem. Uh, we have Google for that, by the way. Like you can always go and search up an answer on Google. So I don't think that.
And now Chat GPT also.
And now Chat GPT as well, right? So they have. You're right. They're becoming smarter. They're finding solutions to those various interventions. But when we customize learning journeys, I think it just makes it more easier because when you have a very broad brushed program or content that they are absorbing, the onus then becomes on really filtering it out and seeing what's in it for me. Whereas when it's a lot more experiential, when it's designed for audiences like myself, when I have had a role to play in kind of calling out what are things I want to learn, and then accordingly that's all woven into the program, I think it becomes much easier to consume the content and then accordingly practice it and make it relevant for myself. So that's really helping. Learners definitely want to be a lot more involved, and that's why, as a delivery mechanism, also most facilitators or most programs now have apart from organization doing the needs assessment, they also ask the learners, like, what would you want to get out of it? I take that with a pinch of salt also because sometimes the intent of the program may be very different, and if asked at the last moment, learners will come up with something totally different. So we definitely need to focus a lot on the whole learning needs assessment, which is somehow I feel the most underutilized part of learning and development. We still tend to take very broad concepts as the needs and then try to tune them to people versus really doing a deeper needs assessment. And that's where I refer to the accountability. Is that accountability with the organizer or with the learner? Because today, not many people put learning on their goals. It's still not seen as a very positive thing to say, I will take this program or I will learn it, unless and until the organization is funding it. So that's literally how my thoughts on how these journeys are helping. They are definitely making it easier to consume. They are making it more relevant, and they are involving the learner a lot more. But at the same time, there still needs to be a lot more focus on advanced needs assessment. It's like when you start a project, the first thing is what's the problem that you're trying to solve? And the more time we spend on that, the better the solution is. So it's the 80-20 principle. That's the same thing that applies to learning. If we spend more time on the needs assessment versus the delivery, we'll probably be more effective than doing it the other way around.
Coming to my last question, Ruchira, for this section, we're very grateful that we serve the fourth wheel purpose for Grey Orange. A lot of companies want to outsource the L&D function entirely. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it's a combination depending on what part of life maturity the organization is at. So if it's for fairly large established firms, there is a lot more scope to have in-house functions because then they know the context of the organization, they can design, and I think the volume is also very high for continuing to build customized journeys. At the same time, for high growth companies like ours, it's extremely valuable to, at this point of time, outsource it and have partners who can come in because the needs keep changing on weeks and months basis. And and if we try to build all those programs internally, by the time we're ready with the program, the organization would have moved to something else. So it's definitely a big help to have it completely outsourced and have partners. At the same time, when we say outsourced, you don't just leave it out and there is no involvement of the talent development or talent management function within. They would continue to be partnering because you need somebody to anchor it within the organization. Like however much we may bring in an external partner, they need somebody to still work with the business and anchor it within the organization, and that's where the partnership is very strong. I I think mostly it's a hybrid model that would work best, where over a period of time, and maybe that will be our journey also, where we bring up, while we look at partners to bring in more customized content on a quick turnaround basis. But at the same time, there are certain things which might be very core to the organization. And when the organization has gotten to the stage of saying, okay, this is something we want to build, and this capability has to be built in every employee in the company, then at that stage, we can also build those functions in-house you know or also there are certain things which over a period of time start running or need to start running as an engine, and there it is literally where an in-house program can help. So I think a hybrid model works best, but then it really depends on the life stage of the organization.
Absolutely. Irrespective of what stage we are at, Ruchira, we're just really glad that, uh, to partner on this learning escapade with you and, of course, Free Orange. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move to the next segment. And mind you, we've got to be a little rapid about it because this is the rapid fire round. So I would like you all to get ready, get active, and get charged. For I really need quick and unfiltered answers for this. Are you ready?
Yes, bring it on.
Okay. If you had a chance, what would you call L&D?
Accelerator or catalyst?
Very interesting. The top 3 HR trends to watch out for this year.
For sure, workplace burnout, hybrid workplaces that will definitely continue, and micro learning.
Ruchira, flipping the question now. What are the worst 3 people management trends from last year that we must bury?
An excessive focus on certifications, which is now pretty much passé. Layoffs being a taboo, I think we just need to align that it's part of life. And decentralized workplaces, it's probably impacted accountability a lot.
If you had an all-power card, what will you change in HR or in L&D in India?
I would for sure take away the tag of event management from HR and L&D. That's one thing I would really want to do.
What should we as Indians imbibe from other learning cultures?
A lot more focus on experiential learning than textbook learning.
So, Ruchira, if not this, what would you be doing?
I would be a storyteller.
What is the most aspirational idea that you have had as a people's person?
I think the concept of choice is very underrated, and that's something we should kind of enable people to exercise. There can't be anything more empowering than being able to exercise one's choice and not having to defer to somebody else to make decisions for us.
One valuable advice to aspirants in the L&D space.
Don't fall in love with your product.
Last 2 questions, Ruchira. Your quick take on why a vibrant learning culture is critical and maybe, I would say, very good for business as well.
I think it's critical because businesses are constantly changing. The time span for any business is now reduced from years to 18 months. And so anybody who's not learning will soon be out of business. That's why a vibrant learning culture is extremely critical.
What are you yearning? And what are you learning as of today? Now, this is where you put on the student hat and not the teacher hat.
I yearn to be more of a business person and so understand the business a lot more than just pure HR. And then accordingly, I'm learning finance, I'm learning different aspects of the business. On an informal side, I'm really learning how to build Instagram reels because I want to be still competitive with the new age workforce. That's how they are interacting with each other.
That's fascinating. So, for me, the biggest key takeaway from this conversation with you has been one, there's just all you need is a willingness to learn. Everything else falls into place. There will be systems that support you. There will be new methodologies. Now you can explore new tools, new platforms. But the only thing that you can control is your willingness. If that's there in place, everything falls into place. And with that, Ruchira, I thank you for that scintillating conversation. This has been an education, and I think you had some extremely interesting and I would say experienced tricks up your sleeve, being the wizard of learning that you are. Thank you so much for joining us today on this extremely delightful episode of Wizards of Learning. And any last concluding thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Chaya. It was extremely interesting to talk about learning in this informal setup. And I really want to thank Harappa for the partnership that we've had. I think it's great and we've learned a lot through our journey together and we'll continue to do that. But I do think learning is here to stay. That's my last few words. It's not going away. It may change its name, it may change its form, but it's probably the only constant in our lives. And so all the best to Harappa and to all of us who are on this great journey together. And hopefully we'll make something really good.
Absolutely. May the voyage keeps going on. And thank you once again, Ruchira. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.